Good evening, friends. I am Rajesh, Asudani, Raqeeb,
This is Dr. Vinod Asudani once again.
and we are welcoming you to yet another episode of Through Literary Lens. This
Right.
time, Vinodji,
Yes, we
We
are
have-
going to discuss a very famous, reputed novel by Arundhati Roy. She is named. She is a reputed name, and this novel received main Booker Prize.
yeah, in 1997.
Yeah, 1997.
Right? Yeah.
And all of a sudden, Arundhati Roy was shot to fame,
Yeah.
right? It was her first work, and she has acquired world fame for this wonderful novel, The God of Small Things.
Then thereafter she continued, but she continued mainly as an activist, and she wrote non-fiction, and recently only her second novel has also been
Ministry
published.
of
Utmost Happiness.
Utmost Happiness.
Yeah, but
Now-
today we will be confined to the God of Small Things.
Yeah, this novel is controversial. Controversial in the sense there are people who shower admiration and appreciation on the novel, and on the other hand, there are people who consider that novel is nothing but trash.
Yeah, so it is both the extremes. On the one hand, it has received the Man Booker Prize, and on the other hand, people have just not been able to finish it through.
Exactly. And Rajesh ji, really,
Ji.
even this novel for a very long time has been an enigma, a kind of mystery, a kind of a difficult text
Yeah.
for me as well, and I'm sure that it has been for you as well.
Yeah, definitely, Vinodji. I must confess that I started it once or twice, but left it midway.
Even that is what has happened with me. I tried to read maybe 60, 70 pages, and all of a sudden I realized that this is not worth the reading novel, right?
Yeah.
And why it has happened like this? Because we are not laymen, we are not
Of course,
just casual
as
readers.
all of our listeners know, viewers know, we have been handling this channel, as well as we both are gold medalists in literature.
Yeah, I've been teaching literature for the last 25 years, and I am a writer myself, poet myself, and Rajesh ji is also a poet of great excellence. So people like us who are well grounded in the literature, if we find this novel rather difficult or monotonous or dull, it's very difficult that what the ordinary readers could say about this novel. But once again, the other day we decided that both of us, we would go through this novel once again. Let us understand that there must be something that this novel has received main Booker Prize.
Yeah,
And
definitely,
yes,
Vinodji, there is something. We can't say that there is nothing, definitely. So we will discuss all these aspects, but first of all, I would like to say why it is so that the people are put off by this novel, including us. The thing is that I feel Arundhati Roy was not an author. Still, she's mainly an activist.
yeah, she
Still,
is a
she's
non-fiction
mainly
writer.
Non-fiction writer.
She writes on social, political, and economic issues. That's absolutely wonderful, right?
Yeah.
The End of Imagination or
Yeah.
Walking with the Comrade. They are wonderful writings, basically. They have the message.
But when it comes to fiction, there should be a certain charm, certain attraction in the style which would keep the reader spellbound.
Yeah, not only the style, but even the content matter, the subject of the novel and the story. Because this is a prose, it is not a poem. Poem can entirely dwell in the realm of imagination or emotion, but the prose has the responsibility to address the reality, and that too in an artistic manner. Because Arundhati Roy simply cannot say that whatever comes to her mind and she puts on the paper, whether the readers like it or not. It is not like that.
And when you go through the first chapters, maybe 4, 5, 7, 8 chapters, you feel like nothing is, keeping you there.
Exactly.
Nothing
Novel is
keeping you
of
there.
340 page novel. It's a very huge novel, right?
Yeah.
But up to 150 or 200 pages, you find as if that you have not got anything of the novel.
And I hear, Vinodji, one of her publishers had advised her to rewrite her first chapter, which she refused. And I believe the publisher was justified.
Not only the first
but we would
chapter.
say almost first 10 chapters you should rewrite.
Yes. The first 200 pages must be compressed into 50 or 100 pages. And that would have been a wonderful thing, because the number one, the things could have been said in a compressed manner. And another thing, that she should take care of artistic expression, because novel is a genre of literature, and when we are presenting something in a literary manner, then of course it has to be interesting, it has to be artistic, and it has to be engaging. Because once anything is published, after that, whether the writer wants or not, there is a relationship between the reader and the writer. Otherwise, why the writer should publish it? That once you publish it, then it is no longer within your own hands. Then the thing becomes universal, right? Then the readers have all the right to say something about it. And because if the scientist works, he works that the science should give something in the end. There has to be some outcome. So when somebody writes a literature, any literary piece, right, there is a message, not message, but at least the literature must impart pleasure. That is the ultimate aim of it.
Vinodji, let me clarify why we are saying that almost 2/3 of the novel is not up to the artistic yardsticks we are talking about. Last 1/3 is definitely artistic. It is captivating and it has the theme and everything. It certainly hits at it. But first 2/3 of the novel, why we are saying that it woefully falls short of the artistic standards, it is because number one, she dwells more and more on the settings and minor details which have no symbolic or metaphorical value as a whole, if we take the novel as a whole.
Just she is trying to capture the milieu, right?
Yeah, milieu.
Right, just a form without any substance. Story does not proceed further. Neither these descriptions have any metaphorical meaning, nor they take us to any philosophical or metaphysical level. So simply, if somebody is going on describing the door, the river, the mountain, the tree, the fruit, the cloth, the barred window, so of course that is wonderful.
I mean,
Language is wonderful.
It has its own place in the novel, definitely, but you can't overdo it.
Yeah,
You
it
can't
has to
overdo
be
it.
at places it's okay.
Yeah.
But every time that she describes something, she gets lost into the description of these outer objects
And
without
that is a highly regional Keralite flavor.
Exactly.
It's not a pan-Indian flavor.
Exactly.
So it's a highly specific, highly local to that particular place. So
Yeah.
it is heavily autobiographical in all its descriptions and so autobiography to certain point is acceptable in fiction,
But
you
this
can't overdo it.
autobiographical element looms large in the novel, and that instead of adding to the artistic value of the novel, it has really decreased its artistic value.
And then the flashbacks, and it's okay, flashback, these are all the devices of literature, but you can't needlessly fluctuate between the past and the present,
When there is no justification for
and
it.
you can't do it in the same chapter. 2 lines are of the present, then 2 lines of the past, again next paragraph comes to the present. You can't really do it.
See,
Person
there
is left confused.
Exactly, there is a stream of consciousness technique,
yeah.
but this technique is not applied to this novel.
Yeah.
Basically, instead of that technique dwells on the inner happenings in the mind of a character. Here, rather more of we find external description, the description of the
Yeah.
external reality.
Yeah.
Towards the end of the novel, then we get some peep into the mind
Inner
of
workings of minds and hearts
Vinod,
of the
Amu,
people.
and that too is not really much.
She's just sketched it very, very briefly. Vinodji, you were saying in our discussions that a writer, T.S. Eliot, has said.
Yes.
है ना?
Yeah.
Yeah.
T.S. Eliot, in his famous essay,
Yeah.
Tradition and Individual
Individual
Talent,
Talent, yeah.
he has made a wonderful remark. He says that, the writer sometimes is unconscious where he has to be conscious. And he is conscious where he has to be unconscious. And that is not a really a good thing
Yeah.
for any good poet or a writer. So that perhaps this sentence of T.S. Eliot, you can have the evidence here.
We would have wanted Arundhati Roy to portray the inner workings of the minds and hearts of the people and the social fabric in a much more detailed manner.
Because Ammu, who happens to be the main character, right, of the novel, she seems to be in love, secret love with Veluta, who
Yeah.
happens to be an untouchable person, who is carpenter and working in the factory, which is owned by Ammu's brother. Right. But this relationship should have been depicted with a greater psychological and emotional depth. That is precisely missing. There are just indirect hints, right? Till we come to the last chapters,
Yeah.
and there we find that they are meeting and making love.
First, definitely hints are dropped, but even their development of their relationship, or even before that, Amu's first marriage and divorce, and her condition should have been depicted in a much more detailed manner. It is just hinted at whereas she devotes 15 to 20 pages for just describing the scenery.
Exactly.
So,
And and Amu then raises these two kids, right, who are twin,
Yeah.
Asta and
even
Rahel.
their lives, Vinodji,
Yeah.
their childhood also, we are left wanting. They love each other, definitely. They are as if they are one, they are not two. But still their hearts and their minds should have been portrayed in a better way, effective way. In the last chapter, many people are put off by the penultimate chapter, second last chapter of the
Yeah.
novel, where Rahel and Esther, they engage in lawmaking with each other, being a real brother and sister also. So this incest has put off many people. But would you call it incest, Vinodji?
Well, perhaps because of the traditional
Yeah.
orthodox mindset
Yeah.
of Asian countries, some
Yeah.
people may disapprove this kind of open depiction of lovemaking between two twins. But I feel the strength of the novel comes
Yeah.
from these last two chapters, where Rahel and Asta, basically they were together in the childhood, and then Asta is sent
Yeah.
to his father,
Father.
right? And they have not met for
And
last
Rahel
20
goes to America.
Exactly,
then comes
for
back,
20
Amu dies.
Exactly, for
Yeah.
20 years or so they have not met.
Met.
So when they come back, right, they are young people, right, young men and women to each other, rather than brother and sister.
Yeah. And
So-
then their past also haunts them. The accidental death of their cousin, Sophie Mole, and their mother's love for Velutha, Amu's love for Velutha, which was not at all socially sanctioned, and both of them died, Amu and Velutha, separately.
Exactly, the novel has some glimpses of the greatness. Every time we
Yeah.
expect that with such a grand style, that novel will be elevated to the higher level. But every time, except in the last chapters, readers, or rather I should say disappointed, right? That greatness is not within the reach of the reader.
Right from the chapter, Vinodji, when Amu has a dream, and then she listens to the transistor and she goes out to meet Velutha. From there itself, the novel picks up in artistic yardsticks.
Yeah, but I would like to say
Yeah.
something more about
Yeah.
this, the incest between
Yeah.
Esther and Rahel.
Rahel.
Now, lovemaking, very often it has been depicted in life as well as in the literature. It's a happy occurrence, or it is the exchange of joy, exchange of affection, exchange of delight. But here I should give credit
Yeah,
to
Arundhati.
Arundhati Roy,
Yes,
that
yes.
the love making, she describes it as
Sharing
a sharing
of
of a grief, and this adds a new dimension altogether to the love making, because love making is a natural process. And she also raises, right, an objection that in our cultures, especially in the Oriental cultures, right, there are
Yeah.
rules: who should be loved,
Who should love whom, how and how much.
and how much, right? That is really important. But I do not suggest that this kind of incestuous relations should be encouraged. In fact, they are not the relations that once they make love, that they are simply overpowered or overwhelmed by the shared grief in that particular
Yeah.
moment. Something that happens in a moment should not be carried on as a label. This is another important element that needs to be properly understood, that there are certain things, there are certain emotions.
Yes.
They are experienced authentically within the parameter of that particular moment, or I would like to say within the boundaries set by the time and in space, limited to that particular moment. And whatever happens there is no need to carry on out of that moment to the other moments of life.
And this requires really an elevated understanding of human psychology and human emotions.
Yes.
I really remember of a factual case which happened in, I think, Indian Navy, where after the death of his wife, daughter and her father lived, and one night they had the relationship. Then daughter got disheartened in school, and counselor found out, and then the person was tried by the Navy, but he was exonerated because the girl came forward and said that it was one of a case. My father doesn't harass me like that.
Exactly. Because see, we cannot judge the relationships by the laws which have been prescribed for it, but the relationship is to be judged by the authenticity of emotion in that particular moment.
Yes.
I think this requires altogether different mindset.
Yes.
Still, perhaps majority of us who have been raised in the traditional societies, in the orthodox societies, whose mind has been morally and socially conditioned.
Like
We
that.
find it very difficult to admit these kind of truth.
But then if you just take a step aside, there are relations between the cousins. They are not frowned upon even in many cultures.
Yeah, they are
not
rather
frowned.
sanctioned,
They are
right?
sanctioned.
You
Even
can marry the
in
maternal
South
cousin.
India, even maternal uncle in South India.
Exactly.
I hear that. Yeah.
Exactly.
So then just a step ahead of that.
Exactly. And another, the central engagement of the novel, I believe it comes from this relationship between a high caste
And,
divorcee woman
yes.
and Veluta,
Untouchable.
an untouchable. Because Indian society has been caste-ridden society. Untouchables, right? They do not have that moral right in the traditional culture to love a woman who belongs to some high caste.
Yeah, any intercaste marriages or affairs are really frowned upon and socially very much condemned and punished also. So this author has done well to depict really, and she has done it in a very effective manner, and that is in the last 1/3 of the novel.
That chapter is really beautiful,
Yeah.
where Vamu goes to the riverside, and Veluta comes, and both of them
That's the last chapter of the novel.
They engage in a very passionate
very-
love making,
yes.
and then the 13 nights this goes on, right?
On tomorrow, yes, tomorrow,
Yeah.
and it ends at the tomorrow as. Yeah.
Exactly. And but then Arundhati Roy is very realist in the sense he understands the way social and political system works, right? The equality of the people, maybe in the constitution, maybe on the paper, but the ground reality is
knows
different.
it too well that on the ground it doesn't operate. That's why she is an activist for all these years.
And then we understand that how Veluta is falsely
Implicated and murdered in a way.
murdered in the drowning case of
Sophie Mole.
who
He is
happens to be the
implicated and is found out, and children are also witness his brutal beating, and finally they are made to say that he only had kidnapped them.
Exactly, and that is how she tries to tell us that how Indian political system and how Indian police system really it is not something that we can expect social justice from, right? And in one of the interviews, she has said that her fiction and her non-fiction basically they portray the same themes. So here we realize when she is depicting about the communist agitations in Kerala, and how communists are trying to finally
they come to the power and try to govern the state.
Yes.
So far they were only agitationists, but now how can they govern? All these things are hinted at and depicted also. And petty communists like her brother, Ramu's brother.
Yes.
He is a communist. He also runs a factory, so he tries to balance the two somehow. But it is a ridiculous effort on his part.
Yes, and again, the subplot of the novel is, in my opinion, it's not properly integrated with main theme. Chaco and his marriage in England and with an English girl, right?
Yeah.
And without no reason, simply she walks away from his life and gets married to somebody else. And when that husband is dead, once again she comes back to him, although she's not married again to Chaco, but she comes back and spends Christmas with Chaco along with her daughter. And in India, she loses her daughter, right, in a very mysterious conditions, basically, because it was none of the fault of the child.
Yeah, maybe it was an accident. She didn't know swimming, maybe, possibly.
Yeah. So what we can say that this novel really it promises greatness, but it fails to achieve that greatness.
Yeah, definitely. It does promise greatness, and had it been more compact, maybe 10-11 chapters only instead of 21, then it could have been a very effective and condensed piece of fiction.
I do not know how far it would be justified, but I am tempted to say that if this novel would not have been awarded the main Booker Prize, what would have been the fate of this kind of novel?
Maybe it would have been forgotten.
Yeah, it would have been forgotten, perhaps, right? Because
Vinodji,
now,
is there a god of small things, or is there a god at all? In the plot of the novel, if you look for it,
of course,
there is a separate chapter depicting that he can do one thing at a time, not multitasking. He can't do all those. Dream is there.
Yes.
But really, the title, how far it goes with the content?
Title, I would like to admire a little. Right?
Yeah.
Perhaps she's referring to a simple, ordinary person like Veluta.
Yeah.
And the god of small thing, because he does very small things. He's a carpenter, so he makes small pieces of furniture and does very small things, right? And he consoles Amu in his own way. Although openly he cannot accept his relationship, but somehow, at the subterranean level, even she is aware that Veluta is there and he has soft corner for her. I think in that sense he becomes the god of small things. And
that makes her life livable after the divorce, and when Veluta dies, she is then reduced to just a shadow of hers, and finally
and
she
again
dies.
if you carefully look at the Amu is sexually deprived. She suffers from sexual starvation, and perhaps all of a sudden she finds herself in the arms of Veluta, and Veluta is attracted by naturally by young, beautiful, high class woman. So it is more of a need, less of a loving relationship. Somehow I read like this.
Yeah, maybe had it been a loving relationship, they were there since childhood in each other's company, so it could have developed earlier as well. But then you can't really say when the love develops. Perhaps when Amu came back, she divorced her husband. Then the love, which was all along in their hearts, it blossomed.
Perhaps love is slave to the situation, and that is what is proved again.
Yeah, again and again it is proved. However we mystify it,
however we take it to be a sublime emotion, but very often it arises out of the strange situations in which two people are thrown together.
Otherwise, for all these years, they did not feel anything for each other, and all of a sudden Amu felt that he was standing on the veranda, and the both of them felt just by looking at each other after all these years.
That is some, that perhaps is the realistic dimension of love that can be said to the credit of the novelist.
Even though she depicts it as if it arose all of a sudden, but it is the product of the situation, possibly.
Yeah, and we can credit the novelist for her wonderful command over the language.
Definitely.
She has a wonderful command over the language, and the way she constructs the sentences, they are not easy. They are really difficult and complex and intricate sentences, and with all the difficult words, rather, even the vocabulary of the novel is very rich.
Sometimes she doesn't even care to explain the Malayali terms.
Yeah,
that also happens at times.
Yeah. So it's very difficult whether we should straightway recommend this novel to the readers or not. But this is a novel which has been talked about much in the academic circles, and she happens to be from India and who got the Booker Prize, I think. And all these reasons, Rajesh have compelled us to speak on this novel.
Yes.
And at least readers are aware about this novel, and awareness about the literary works is also important, because in one lifetime we cannot read all.
Yes.
So please comment how you liked this discussion, and those who are interested, definitely they should go. Those who have got a patience, those who have got a passion for the reading novels, those readers should definitely go for the reading of The God of Small Things. Thank you very much.
Namaskar.